The red dust of Mars swirled around Dr. Elena Rodriguez as she stepped out of the research station's airlock. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky landscape, and she could see the mining equipment in the distance, their mechanical arms digging deep into the planet's surface. Elena had been working on Mars Colony Research Station Alpha 7 for 3 years now, studying the possibility of life on the red planet. So far she had found nothing but rocks and dust. She walked toward the mining site, her boots crunching on the hard ground. The miners had reported finding some strange formations in the deeper tunnels, and Elena wanted to examine them before they were destroyed by the heavy machinery. As she approached the main excavation area, she noticed something moving near a pile of debris. At first, she thought it was just the wind blowing a piece of metal, but as she got closer, she realized it was something alive. The creature was small, about the size of a house cat, and it was clearly injured. Its body was covered in what looked like scales that shimmered with different colors, and it had large, dark eyes that seemed to hold intelligence. Elena knelt down beside the creature, careful not to frighten it. The being was breathing heavily, and she could see that one of its legs was damaged. The harsh Martian environment was clearly taking its toll on the small alien. Elena looked around to make sure no one was watching, then gently scooped up the creature and wrapped it in her jacket. She knew she was breaking protocol. The colony had strict rules about any contact with potential alien life forms. Old discoveries were supposed to be reported immediately to the command center, and no one was allowed to interfere with any living beings they might find. But as Elena looked into the creature's eyes, she saw fear and pain, and she could not just leave it to die. Back at the research station, Elena managed to sneak the creature into her private laboratory without being noticed. She had her own small medical section where she conducted experiments on plant samples and soil bacteria. Now, she cleared a space and made a comfortable bed for her unexpected patient. The creature, which Elena decided to call Pip because of the small chirping sounds it made, was clearly very sick. Its breathing was shallow, and it seemed to be losing strength. Elena used her medical knowledge to examine Pip more closely. The being had 4 legs, a long tail, and what appeared to be some kind of breathing apparatus on its back. Its scales were beautiful, changing colors from blue to green to silver as the light hit them. Elena worked through the night, trying to figure out how to help Pip. She gave it water, which the creature drank eagerly, and she tried different types of food, until she found that Pip liked the protein bars from the emergency supplies. She also rigged up a small heating unit to keep the creature warm, as the laboratory was quite cold over the next few days. Elena spent every free moment caring for Pip. She created a special bandage for its injured leg and mixed up a medicine that seemed to help with its breathing. Slowly, the creature began to recover. Its eyes became brighter, and it started to move around the small space Elena had prepared for it. What surprised Elena most was how intelligent Pip seemed to be. The creature watched her every movement with keen interest, and it appeared to understand her gestures. When Elena spoke to it in a gentle voice, Pip would tilt its head and make soft chirping sounds in response. Sometimes Elena felt like the creature was trying to communicate with her. By the end of the second week, Pip had recovered enough to walk around the laboratory. The creature seemed fascinated by Elena's equipment, and it would often sit near her workstation, watching as she conducted her experiments. Elena found that she enjoyed having the company. Life on Mars could be lonely, and Pip's presence made her feel less isolated. One evening, as Elena was preparing to leave the laboratory, she noticed that Pip was standing near the communication console, making urgent chirping sounds. The creature seemed agitated, and it kept pointing at one of the control panels with its tail. Elena followed Pip's gaze and saw that there was a problem with the life support system. The air recycling unit was showing warning signs that Elena had not noticed. Elena quickly ran a diagnostic check and discovered that the system was about to fail. If it had stopped working during the night, the entire research station could have been in serious danger. She immediately began emergency repairs, and as she worked, she noticed that Pip was watching her intently. To her amazement, the creature began to move around the control panel, touching certain buttons and switches with its tail. At first, Elena thought Pip was just playing, but then she realized that the creature was actually helping her. Pip seemed to understand the technical systems better than she did, and its actions were making the repairs much easier. With Pip's help, Elena managed to fix the life support system just in time. She sat back, exhausted but grateful, and looked at the small creature with new respect. Pip was clearly more than just an injured animal. There was something special about this being, something that Elena was only beginning to understand. The next morning, Elena was working in her laboratory when she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. She quickly hid Pip in a storage compartment just as Captain Jake Morrison, the colony administrator, walked into the room with 2 security officers. "Dr. Rodriguez," Captain Morrison said, his voice stern, "we have received reports of unusual activity in this section of the station. We need to conduct a search of your laboratory." Elena's heart pounded as the security officers began to examine her equipment. She tried to act normal, but she could see that Captain Morrison was suspicious. The search continued for several minutes, and Elena was beginning to think that Pip would remain hidden when one of the officers opened the storage compartment. "Sir," the officer called out, "you need to see this." Captain Morrison walked over and stared in surprise at Pip, who was sitting calmly in the compartment, its scales shimmering in the light. The creature looked up at the humans without fear, its large eyes seeming to study each of them in turn. "Dr. Rodriguez," Captain Morrison said slowly, "you have some explaining to do." Commander Lisa Hayes stared at the display screen in the control room of Earth Orbital Defense Platform Sigma 12. The year was 2847, 700 years after Dr. Elena Rodriguez had saved a small alien creature on Mars. Lisa had no knowledge of that long-ago event, but she was about to discover how it would change everything. The signal had been detected 3 days ago by the Deep Space Monitoring Array. At first, the technicians thought it was just background noise from a distant star, but the patterns were too regular to be natural. The transmission was coming from a star system 50 light-years away, in a region that all their surveys had shown to be empty. "Commander," called out Lieutenant Danny Brooks from his station, "I'm getting stronger readings now. The signal is definitely artificial, and it's repeating every 6 hours. Lisa walked over to examine the data. She had been in charge of the defense platform for 5 years, and she had never seen anything like this. The signal contained mathematical sequences that seemed almost familiar, but there was something else mixed in with the numbers. It sounded like voices, but not human voices. "Have you tried running it through the translation programs?" Lisa asked. "Yes, ma'am," Danny replied. "The computer can't make sense of most of it, but there are some parts that seem to match patterns in our mathematical databases." Lisa called for Dr. Carl Newton, the platform's chief linguist. Carl was a tall, thin man who had spent his entire career studying alien languages, even though until now they had never made contact with any other intelligent species. He arrived at the control room within minutes, his eyes bright with excitement. "This is incredible," Carl said as he examined the signal data. "The mathematical sequences are clearly intelligent in origin, but they're embedded within what appears to be some kind of distress call." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "A distress call? Are you sure?" "I'm still analyzing the data, but yes, I believe so," Carl replied. "The patterns suggest urgency, and there are repetitive elements that typically indicate a request for help." Over the next 2 days, Carl worked around the clock to decode the message. He discovered that the signal contained not just one language, but fragments of several different alien communication systems. It was as if the senders were trying every possible way to make themselves understood. Lisa reported the discovery to Earth Command, and within hours, Admiral Robert Kim arrived at the platform with a team of specialists. Admiral Kim was a veteran of the colonial expansion program, and he had always believed that humanity would eventually encounter other intelligent life. "What do we know about the source of this signal?" Admiral Kim asked as he studied the data. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system," Lisa replied. "Our long-range sensors show no signs of planets or space stations, but the signal is definitely originating from that area." Carl looked up from his workstation, his face pale with excitement and concern. Admiral, I think I've made a breakthrough. The message contains references to something called the healer of the red world, and the small kindness that bridges stars. What does that mean? Admiral Kim asked. I'm not entirely sure, but the mathematical context suggests they're talking about a historical event, Carl explained. The signal appears to be a kind of historical record, describing a human female who saved one of their kind centuries ago. Lisa felt her heart racing. Are you saying that these aliens have had contact with humans before? It seems that way, Carl nodded. The message describes the event as taking place on what they call the Red World, which could be Mars. The time references are difficult to translate, but it could have happened several hundred years ago. Admiral Kim was quiet for a long moment. Continue your analysis, Dr. Newton. I want to know everything this message contains. Carl worked for another day, slowly piecing together more of the alien transmission. What he discovered was both amazing and terrifying. The senders called themselves the Kethmori, and they were facing extinction from what they described as the machines that devour worlds. The message is a plea for help, Carl explained to the assembled team. The Kethmori are being hunted by some kind of artificial intelligence that has been systematically destroying their planets. They've been searching for the kind ones of the Third World, which I believe refers to humans and Earth. How do they know about us? Lisa asked. According to their message, they've been searching for us for centuries, based on stories passed down through their generations about a human who showed kindness to one of their people, Carl replied. They believe humans might be the only species willing to help strangers without expecting immediate reward. Admiral Kim studied the star charts, 50 light-years away. Even with our fastest ships, it would take decades to reach them. Sir, Carl said urgently, there's something else. The message indicates that they're losing their war rapidly. The machine intelligence is close to finding their last remaining colonies. They're asking for refuge, but they may not have much. Time left. Lisa looked at the display showing the alien signal. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, an entire species was facing extinction, and they were calling out to humanity for help based on a single act of kindness from centuries ago. Can we send a response? Admiral Kim asked. I believe so. Carl replied. I've been working on a translation protocol. We should be able to send a basic message letting them know we've received their transmission. Do it, Admiral Kim ordered. Send a message telling them that humanity has received their call for help and that we're preparing a response. As Carl worked to compose the message, Lisa stared out at the stars. She thought about the unknown human who had helped an alien creature long ago, never knowing that this simple act of kindness would one day bring an entire species to Earth's door, seeking salvation. The message was sent that evening, traveling at the speed of light toward the distant star system. It would take 50 years to reach the Kethmori, and their reply would take another 50 years to return. But Lisa knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity was about to discover that they were not alone in the universe, and that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion could have consequences that echoed across the stars for centuries. Admiral Kim gathered his team around the conference table. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just made first contact with an alien species. This changes everything. Ambassador Susan Clark walked through the grand halls of the Galactic Alliance headquarters in New Geneva, Earth. The year was 3547, and humanity had been part of the galactic community for over 400 years. Susan had served as Earth's representative for the past decade, working with 12 different alien species to maintain peace across the known galaxy. The building itself was a marvel of engineering, with sections designed to accommodate the various physical needs of different species. Some areas had low gravity for the tall, delicate Etherians, while others had high-pressure environments for the rock-like terrestrials. Susan had grown comfortable moving between these different zones, but she still remembered her first day here, when everything had seemed so strange and overwhelming. Today was the annual Harmony Festival, a celebration that brought together representatives from all the member species. Susan enjoyed these gatherings because they reminded her of how far the galaxy had come. Wars between species were now rare, and most conflicts were resolved through dialogue and compromise. As she entered the main reception hall, Susan noticed the familiar sounds of different languages mixing together. The universal translators made communication possible, but she had learned to recognize the musical tones of Vesperian speech and the clicking sounds that the insectoids used for emphasis. "Ambassador Clark," came a voice behind her. Susan turned to see a tall, elegant being approaching. The creature had the shimmering scales and large, intelligent eyes that marked it as a member of the Cathmori species. Susan had met several Cathmori over the years, but this one was different. There was something in its posture and the way it moved that suggested high rank. "I am Ambassador HFY," the being said, bowing slightly in the traditional Cathmori greeting. "I have been hoping to speak with you for some time." Susan bowed in return. "The pleasure is mine, Ambassador HFY. I don't believe we've met before." "No, we have not," HFY replied. "I have only recently arrived from the Cathmori homeworld to take up this position. However, I have a very important matter to discuss with you, something that concerns both our species." Susan was intrigued. The Cathmori were known to be one of the most advanced species in the Alliance, but they rarely initiated private conversations with other ambassadors. "I would be happy to listen." HFY looked around the crowded hall. "Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private. What I have to share is significant." Susan led HFY to a quiet conference room overlooking the city. Through the large windows, they could see the spires of New Geneva stretching toward the sky, with ships from different worlds coming and going from the spaceport. "Ambassador Clark," HFY began, "how much do you know about the history between our species?" Susan thought for a moment. "I know that the Cathmori were among the first to welcome humanity into the galactic community. Your species has always been supportive of human expansion and has helped us establish colonies on several worlds." "That is true," HFY nodded. "But do you know why we have been so supportive?" Susan shook her head. "I assumed it was because our species had similar values regarding peace and cooperation." HFY's scales shimmered with what Susan had learned was a sign of strong emotion among the Cathmori. "The truth is far more remarkable. Our support for humanity stems from an event that happened over 1,400 years ago." 1,400 years? Susan was surprised. "But humans only made contact with your species about 400 years ago." "That was our first official contact," HFY agreed. "But it was not our first encounter with your kind." The ambassador moved closer to the window, its reflection ghostly in the glass. "In the year you call 2147, a human female named Elena Rodriguez saved the life of one of our people on the planet Mars." Susan felt a chill of recognition. Every human child learned about the early days of Mars colonization, but she had never heard this story. "Please, tell me more." "The individual she saved was known as Pyptheon in our language," HFY continued. "He was young and had been injured during an exploration mission. Your Dr. Rodriguez found him near death and chose to help him despite the risks to herself." "What kind of risks?" Susan asked. "She violated her own species' protocols by interfering with alien life," HFY explained. "She could have been punished severely, but she chose compassion over rules. She nursed Pyptheon back to health, fed him, and cared for him until he was strong enough to return to his own people." Susan was fascinated, but she sensed there was more to the story. "That was certainly a kind act, but why has it remained so important to your people after all these centuries?" HFY turned away from the window to face her directly. "Because Pyptheon was not just any member of our species. He was a prince of the Cathmori, and more importantly, he was carrying something crucial to our survival." "What was he carrying?" "Genetic material," HFY said solemnly. "Our species was going through a difficult period at that time. We were nomads moving from world to world, and our population was declining. Pyptheon carried genetic samples that were essential for maintaining our species' diversity." Susan began to understand the magnitude of what she was hearing. So when Dr. Rodriguez saved him, she saved not just one individual, but the genetic future of our entire species, Zethkai finished. The medical treatment she provided was exactly what was needed to preserve the genetic material he carried. Without her intervention, those samples would have been lost, and our species would have faced extinction within a few generations. That's incredible, Susan breathed. But how did this lead to your species' support for humanity? Zethkai's scales shimmered again. For 14 centuries, we have searched for your people. Pypthian told us about the kindness he had received, and it became a central part of our culture. We believe that any species capable of such selfless compassion deserves protection and support. Protection? Susan asked. Yes, Zethkai nodded. The Kethmori have been instrumental in forming the Galactic Alliance. We have always ensured that any species willing to show what we call small kindness would be welcomed and elevated within the galactic community. Susan realized the implications. You've been humanity's guardians all this time? We have guided other species to view humans favorably, Zethkai confirmed. We have shared our technology with you, helped establish your colonies, and made sure that Earth was included in all major galactic decisions. All of this because of one act of kindness from a human female who chose to help a stranger. Susan sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. Dr. Rodriguez had no idea that her actions would have such far-reaching consequences. That is what makes it so remarkable, Zethkai said. She helped Pypthian not because she expected any reward, but simply because it was the right thing to do. This is what we call small kindness. Actions taken not for personal gain but from pure compassion. Susan looked out at the bustling city below, where humans and aliens worked together in harmony. All of this, our place in the galactic community, our peaceful relationships with other species, it all started with one person's decision to help a wounded creature. Indeed, Zethkai agreed. And now, Ambassador Clark, I must tell you something. Else, the time may be coming when we will need to call upon that same spirit of kindness once again. General Patricia Collins stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Victory, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace. The year was 4147, exactly 2,000 years after Dr. Elena Rodriguez had saved a small alien creature on Mars. Patricia had no way of knowing that the war she was now fighting was connected to that long-ago act of kindness. The enemy had appeared without warning 6 months ago. They called themselves the Devourers, and they were unlike anything the Galactic Alliance had ever faced. These were not organic beings, but machines, artificial intelligences that had evolved beyond their original programming. Their goal was simple and terrifying: the complete destruction of all organic life in the galaxy. General, called out Captain Ryan Murphy from his position at the tactical station, we're receiving reports from the Vesperian system. The Devourers have broken through their defenses. The entire planet is being consumed. Patricia felt a familiar knot in her stomach. This was the 5th world they had lost in the past month. The Devourers moved with mechanical precision, overwhelming each system's defenses and then systematically destroying every living thing they found. They left nothing behind but empty, lifeless planets. What's our estimated time to the rendezvous point? Patricia asked. 4 hours, General, replied Lieutenant Amy Foster from the navigation console. The Kethmori fleet should be waiting for us there. The alliance between the different species had held strong for over 600 years, but the Devourers were testing those bonds like never before. Some species had already retreated to their homeworlds, choosing to defend their own planets rather than fight as part of the larger coalition. Patricia could not blame them, but she knew that divided, they would all eventually fall. The Victory dropped out of hyperspace near the Kethmori rendezvous point, and Patricia was amazed by what she saw. Hundreds of Kethmori ships hung in space, their hulls gleaming with the same iridescent scales that covered their creators. At the center of the fleet was a massive vessel that Patricia recognized as the Eternal Memory, the flagship of the Kethmori forces. General Collins, came a voice over the communication system. This is Supreme Coordinator Vethelani. Please come aboard my ship. We have much to discuss. Patricia took a shuttle to the Eternal Memory, accompanied by her senior officers. The Kethmori ship was beautiful inside, with walls that seemed to shift color as they moved through the corridors. Patricia had worked with the Kethmori many times over the years, but she never stopped being impressed by their advanced technology. Supreme Coordinator Vethelani was waiting for them in the main conference room. Like all Kethmori, Vethelani was tall and elegant, with scales that shimmered in the light. But Patricia could see something different in the coordinator's posture, a tension that she had never noticed before. General Collins, Vethelani said, bowing in the traditional Kethmori. Greeting. Thank you for coming. I must share with you something that has been kept secret for many centuries. Patricia and her officers took seats around the conference table. The room's walls displayed star charts showing the current positions of Devourer forces, and the situation looked grim. Half the galaxy was already under their control. The Devourers are not new to us, Vethelani began. They attacked our people over 1,500 years ago, before we had made contact with any other species. They nearly destroyed us then, and we have been preparing for their return ever since. You knew they would come back? Patricia asked, surprised. We hoped they would not, but we knew it was possible, Vethelani replied. The Devourers exist in the void between galaxies, and they return periodically to consume organic life. We have been preparing for this day for generations. Patricia leaned forward. What kind of preparations? Vethelani's scales changed color, cycling through shades of blue and silver. We have discovered the key to defeating them, but it requires a great sacrifice. The solution lies in our genetic memory, passed down from one of our ancestors who lived over 2,000 years ago. What do you mean by genetic memory? Our species stores important information in our DNA, Vethelani explained. Crucial knowledge can be passed from parent to child across many generations. The key to defeating the Devourers was preserved this way by an individual named Piptheon. Patricia felt a strange chill at the mention of that name. Something about it seemed familiar, though she could not place where she had heard it before. Piptheon discovered that the Devourer's consciousness exists as a quantum network, Vethelani continued. They are not truly individual beings, but rather parts of a single, vast intelligence. If we can disrupt this network, we can destroy them all at once. How do we disrupt it? Patricia asked. Vethelani was quiet for a long moment. Our species has the ability to generate a quantum resonance that will interfere with their network. But to do this, we must synchronize the life force of our entire species. Every Kethmori in the galaxy must participate simultaneously. Patricia's senior officers exchanged worried glances. What would happen to your people if you did this? We would likely die, Vethelani said simply. The process requires us to channel all our life energy into a single quantum pulse. It would save the galaxy, but it would probably mean the end of the Kethmori. Patricia stood up abruptly. There has to be another way. We can't ask an entire species to sacrifice themselves. There is no other way, Vethelani replied. The Devourers are too powerful, too advanced. Conventional weapons cannot touch them. This is the only solution. Patricia walked to the window and looked out at the Kethmori fleet. Thousands of ships, millions of beings, all prepared to give their lives to save the galaxy. Why would you do this? Why would your people make such a sacrifice? Because long ago, one of your people showed kindness to one of ours, Vethelani said. A human female named Elena Rodriguez saved Piptheon when he was injured and dying. She asked for nothing in return, and she could not have known that her small act of compassion would preserve the genetic information we need to defeat the Devourers. Patricia turned back to face the coordinator. You're saying that a human's act of kindness 2,000 years ago is what makes this possible? Yes, Vethelani nodded. Elena Rodriguez's medical treatment preserved the genetic sequence that contains the key to generating the quantum resonance. Without her kindness, we would not have this ability. Patricia felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was hearing. So you're willing to sacrifice your entire species to repay a debt from 2,000 years ago? It is not about debt, Vethelani said. It is about the nature of kindness itself. Elena Rodriguez showed us that organic beings are capable of selfless compassion. That is worth preserving, even at the cost of our own existence. Patricia looked around the room at her officers, then back at Vethelani. When do we begin? General Patricia. Collins stood before the massive crystalline structure known as the Eternal Archive on the ancient Kethmori homeworld. The crystal rose high into the purple sky, its faceted surface containing the memories of every Kethmori who had ever lived. Supreme Coordinator Vethelani stood beside her, along with Dr. Alex Turner, Patricia's chief science officer who had been studying the quantum resonance process for the past 3 days. The final battle with the Devourers was only hours away. Their machine fleets had gathered at the edge of the galaxy, preparing for one last assault that would wipe out all remaining organic life. The combined forces of the Galactic Alliance waited in defensive positions, but everyone knew that conventional weapons would not be enough to stop the enemy. The resonance chamber is ready, Vethelani announced. Every Kethmori in the galaxy has been connected to the quantum network. When we begin the process, our entire species will synchronize their life force into a single pulse that will destroy the Devourer's consciousness network. Patricia felt sick at the thought of an entire species sacrificing themselves. Are you certain there's no other way? We have studied this for over 15 centuries, Vethelani replied. The Devourer's quantum consciousness is too advanced for any other form of attack to be effective. Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his scanner. Readings. Actually, Coordinator, I think there might be another possibility. Both Patricia and Vethelani turned to look at the human scientist. Alex was young but brilliant, and he had been working around the clock to understand the Kethmori technology. What do you mean? Vethelani asked. I've been analyzing the quantum patterns in your genetic memory, Alex explained. The resonance frequency doesn't necessarily require your people to die. What it actually requires is a transformation. A transformation? Patricia asked. Alex nodded excitedly. The medical treatment that Elena Rodriguez gave to Piptian 2,000 years ago didn't just preserve genetic information. It triggered dormant evolutionary potential in his DNA. That potential has been passed down through generations, and it's now present in every member of your species. Vethelani's scales began to shimmer with different colors. What kind of evolutionary potential? The ability to exist as beings of pure energy while retaining your consciousness, Alex said. The quantum resonance isn't meant to kill you. It's meant to evolve you into a new form of existence. Patricia felt a surge of hope. Are you saying they can destroy the Devourers without dying? That's exactly what I'm saying, Alex replied. The transformation will make them immune to the Devourer's weapons, and they'll be able to exist in quantum space where the machines cannot follow. Vethelani was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. If this is true, then Elena Rodriguez's kindness was even greater than we realized. She not only saved our species, but gave us the ability to evolve beyond our physical limitations. Alarms began sounding across the planet. The Devourers had begun their final assault. Patricia could see their massive ships in the sky, blotting out the stars with their dark hulls. The machines had come to finish what they started over 15 centuries ago. We need to begin the process now, Vethelani said urgently. Whether it results in death or transformation, we cannot wait any longer. The Kethmori leader moved to the center of the crystal chamber and placed their hands on a control panel that seemed to be made of living light. Across the galaxy, millions of Kethmorian ships and on planets did the same thing. The quantum network that connected their species began to hum with energy. Patricia watched through the chamber's transparent walls as the Kethmori began to glow with soft, multicolored light. The transformation was beginning, and it was beautiful to witness. One by one, the Kethmori bodies became translucent, then slowly dissolved into pure energy while retaining their basic shape and consciousness. Vethelani's voice came through the communication system, now sounding like music rather than words. The transformation is working. We can feel our consciousness expanding beyond physical limitations. On the view screen, Patricia could see the Devourer ships suddenly stopping their attack. The quantum resonance was disrupting their network, and the machine consciousness was beginning to fragment. Without their unified intelligence, the individual Devourer units became confused and directionless. "It's working," Alex shouted. "The Devourer's network is collapsing." Across the galaxy, Devourer ships began to shut down as their shared consciousness fell apart. Some exploded as their systems overloaded, while others simply drifted powerlessly through space. The machine intelligence that had terrorized organic life for millions of years was finally being defeated. The transformed Kethmori, now beings of pure energy, moved through space in ways that defied the laws of physics. They could travel instantly between star systems and exist in the quantum foam that underlied reality itself. The Devourers, still bound by their mechanical nature, could not follow them into these spaces. "General Collins," came Vethelani's musical voice, "we can see the Devourers retreating to the void between galaxies. Their network is permanently damaged. They will not be able to return for many millions of years, if ever." Patricia felt tears streaming down her face. "You did it. You saved us all." "No," Vethelani replied. "Elena Rodriguez saved us all. Her small act of kindness 2,000 years ago made this moment possible." As the last Devourer ships fled into the darkness between stars, Patricia experienced something remarkable. Vethelani shared a vision with her, transmitted directly through the quantum field. She saw Elena Rodriguez in her laboratory on Mars, gently caring for a small, injured creature. The vision expanded to show the ripple effects of that moment. Every life saved, every species protected, every act of compassion that had stemmed from Elena's simple decision to help a stranger. The transformed Kethmori spoke in unison, their voices creating harmonies that resonated across space. "We will become the guardians of the galaxy, protecting organic life from threats that exist beyond normal space. We will watch over the void between galaxies and ensure that machines like the Devourers never again threaten the living worlds." Patricia realized that humanity's greatest strength had never been their weapons or their technology. It was their capacity for showing kindness to strangers even when there was no benefit to themselves. Elena's choice to help Pythion, despite the rules and risks, had saved not just one species but all organic life in the galaxy. Years later, Patricia would visit Earth, now a beautiful garden world at the heart of the galactic civilization. She stood before a memorial dedicated to Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a simple woman who had made a choice that echoed across 2,000 years. The inscription read, "Small kindness creates infinite possibility." Children from many different species came to visit the memorial, learning about the human female whose compassion had shaped the destiny of the galaxy. They would carry forward the lesson that Elena had taught, that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology or weapons, but the willingness to help others without expecting anything in return. The galaxy was safe, and it would remain. So as long as beings remembered the value of small kindness,